Hawking has some good news for those who've despaired of life on Earth, or in this universe. Hawking has found you a way out. They named their idols Al-Uzza, Manat, and Hubal, yet, upon investigation, these are just baseless names and empty concepts. Darwin and his disciples followed in the footsteps of ignorant idol worshippers by propagating flashy names with ridiculous content. The myth zealots assigned names to what they claimed to be early human-like species, found hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago: Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo neanderthalensis. They claimed that these species provide the missing links between humans and their animal ancestors. After they made their living, for decades, from the lie that the Neanderthal man is the intermediate link between humans and their animal-like ancestors, successive research showed that, consequently, the naive youth who's fallen victim to intellectual terrorism finds himself unconsciously driven to escape the trap, the frame, set for creationists, and join the side of enlightened scientists.
Please read.
Hasperopi, Hasperopithecus, Harolodukuku, Harodukukuki.
Coco Okuki? His name is Hesperopithecus haroldcooki. You cannot even pronounce its name, yet you dare question the theory? You ignoramus.
This is the scientific name for Nebraska man. Dear viewers, do you remember the story of Nebraska man whom they dreamt up from a single tooth, then claimed that it belonged to one of the animal-like human ancestors who lived 6 million years ago? They even sketched him in prestigious journals like Science trumpeted his discovery. Did you know that he was given a scientific name? Let's read the name together. I will zoom in on it for you. Hesperopithecus haroldcooki. Hesperopithecus haroldcooki. Did you get it? Hesperopithecus haroldcooki. Certainly you will find some who will spend an hour trying to spell it out, feeling helpless and ashamed of their inability to pronounce it, and say to themselves, "If I cannot even spell the name, how can I discuss such complex science? These scientists know best." As previously mentioned, it turned out that this tooth belonged to a pig. Accordingly, science refuted the existence of this so-called anthropoid. Likewise, the feathered dinosaur fossil, with a conference held in its honor, that was publicized by National Geographic in 1999, was also given the scientific name of Archaeoraptor leoningensis. It was alleged to have lived 125 million years ago. Alas, they celebrated too early. It turned out to be a forgery as published by Nature and other journals. We know there are some newborns waiting to be named. However, when it comes to mythology, names are given to fictitious beings, not yet born, nor will they ever be. The myth zealots frequently use misleading names to impress the shallow-minded. For clarity, we'll demonstrate how they do this in 3 main areas. First, assigning grandiose names to absurd myths. Second, assigning elusive names to facts to serve their myth narrative. Third, framing. Let's start with the first point, assigning grandiose names to absurd myths. As expected, Darwin led the way for his followers by establishing the practice of assigning fancy names to myths, to justify his tale about the inheritance of traits acquired by use and disuse. Darwin invented the concept that gemmules, released by all body cells, congregate in the reproductive organs and impact the traits of the fetus. What did he call this theory? Pangenesis, meaning whole or encompassing development. Fancy names, right? Yet, with meaningless content. Simple observation alone tells us that traits acquired through use and disuse are not inherited, regardless. Darwin flouted common knowledge and proposed a theory around the gemmules which he named pangenesis. Even though Darwin's disciples acknowledged the invalidity of this theory, they liked the sound of pan so much that they formulated the directed panspermia theory, which refers to seeding as the source of every living thing in a directed way. What is the essence of this theory? Francis Crick, one of the two discoverers of the genome composition, realized that the genetic code could not have existed coincidentally. Excellent. So, he suggested that an advanced extraterrestrial civilization planted the seed of life, which bears the genetic code, and then just left. Subsequently, that seed underwent evolutionary processes. Explain how these extraterrestrial beings started, Mr. Crick? This does not matter. What matters is that we have an explanation for life on Earth, and we've shifted the issue to outer space. Okay, this assumption that creatures from space planted life on Earth, is it based on observations or empirical science? Of course not. So, in short, you deny the existence of a creator, because you only believe in observations and experimentation, as you claim. But you believe in the panspermia myth which cannot be observed or experimented upon? Wretched it is for the wrongdoers as an exchange. They'll exchange any nonsense for the belief in the creator. This is the reality of directed panspermia. Theory of the all-encompassing seed, the claimed seed of everything. Nevertheless, they still try to dazzle you with the pan prefix. Pangenesis, panspermia. Even though in reality, these theories are not even worth a single pancake. Remember when Stephen Hawking died, and some were fiercely defending him and granting him the paradise he never believed in? Among Hawking's accomplishments, they would list his theory of everything. Did they know what this theory was all about? Or was it parrot-like repetition? No need to know, man. Clearly, it is a wonderful and important theory that explains everything. Everything? Setting aside the fact that Hawking changed his mind about the feasibility of formulating an ultimate theory that explains everything, what was the essence of this theory of everything proposed by Hawking? He explains it in his book, The Grand Design, where he built upon Darwin's myth that living organisms can be explained without a creator, and concluded that we could also explain the universe without a creator. How is that possible, Hawking? He said that due to the law of gravity, the universe created itself from a minute particle. Over the years, the physical estimates of the size of this particle have gradually gotten smaller. So, Hawking concluded that the law of gravity caused the universe to create itself from nothing, not even a small particle or anything else. He stated, because there is a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. He then claimed to have made the necessary calculations to validate the cosmic constants within this perspective using M-theory. And just like that, Hawking transforms a law from a mere description of the effects of a willing doer's intentional act into an executor of actions. Imagine that I see you typing on the computer at a speed of 100 words per minute, then deduce this law. Typing at the speed of 100 words per minute is what created the keyboard, hit the keys, and transformed the hits into words. Hawking has some good news for those who've despaired of life on Earth, or even in this universe. Hawking has found you a way out. He propagated the idea that if you were trapped in a black hole, you may be transferred to another universe. It is no surprise, then, that the editor of Physics World, Dr. Hamish Johnston, expressed his concern that the British public may refuse to allocate part of their taxes for funding physics research if they believe that most physicists spend their time discussing such nonsense. Nonetheless, all you need to do is add the word theory before any nonsense, embellish those who come up with it, like Hawking, and ban opposing expert opinions from the media. And there you have it. Not only does such nonsense magically become a scientific theory, but also a theory of everything. Just add the word theory to any myth to evoke reverence in the hearts of the foolish. While names and labels do not provide any scientific legitimacy or transform a myth into reality, assigning meaningless names is an old trick used by the propagators of falsehood to promote their myths. As Allah Almighty says, what is translated as, "They are not but mere names you have named them. They named their idols Al-Uzza, Manat, and Hubal. Yet upon investigation, these are just baseless names and empty concepts." Darwin and his disciples followed in the footsteps of the ignorant idol worshippers, propagating resounding names with ridiculous content. The second manipulative method used by myth zealots is assigning elusive names to facts to support their myth. Diseases like lipoma and spina bifida were given deceptive names such as human tail and considered evidence for their so-called atavism. We have scientifically refuted some of these absurdities in the episode, Your Tale That You Know Little About. They use such scientific terms to psychologically manipulate and persuade people that their myth is an established fact with a specific name, and that's that. This is to implicitly tell you, what a pity. Do you still deny the veracity of such things? Your knowledge is outdated. Their validity is not in question. They're undoubtedly true and already have scientific names. End of story. We're only seeking more supporting evidence. A clear example of assigning misleading names to facts is calling adaptation microevolution. To give the false impression that adaptations are only random mutations and blind selection when, as demonstrated in the episode, citrate-utilizing bacteria, they are subtle and wonderful adaptations operating with remarkable mechanisms, indicating a creation with wisdom, with no room for randomness or chance, as they claim. The myth zealots assigned names to so-called early human ancestors, supposedly found hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo neanderthalensis. They claimed that these creatures were the missing links between humans and their animal ancestors. Putting aside the joke of their transitional forms, which we discussed in detail in Who Stole the Million, you'll find that most of these fossils, whose names start Homo to delude you into thinking that they are human ancestors, were proven to be fake, belonging to animals unrelated to humans, or normal human remains, that were given different names to imply that they were transitional forms. A good example, with the fanciest name of all, is Homo neanderthalensis, or Neanderthal man, which is also the most researched.
Let's get to the topic. What was the first thing I told you? Neanderthal man, he was first discovered in 1856. What is Neanderthal man? Homo neanderthalensis, again Homo neanderthalensis, is a chronologically late human-like being.
Some might also mention that there are more than 300 discovered fossils for this being, and that it's an established truth, as this huge number of fossils cannot all be falsified.
About 300 samples, some of which are almost complete. Most of them are for the Neanderthal, around 300 at the very least.
Dear viewer, pay attention to this deception technique, straw manning, i.e., moving the discussion from the issue in dispute to undisputed issues. We never claimed that all the fossils were fake. Rather, we rejected much of their interpretation, even if they discover 300, 3,000, or 3 million fossils of Neanderthals. It would not support their myth in any way. Because after they made a living promoting the myth for decades and claiming that the Neanderthal is an intermediate link between humans and animal-like ancestors, successive research has come out to indicate that he is a human with intelligence equal to ours, and that he had a language, as this research, published 43 years ago, shows. Moreover, he had religious rituals and used various dyes and tools. This study, published 4 years ago, is one of the most comprehensive studies as it reviews 151 studies on Neanderthals and proves that they were humans, nothing more and nothing less. This has become an established truth, as published by the British Guardian and others. So, the Neanderthals are simply a nation of human beings, not an intermediate link or transitional form, or any of this nonsense. Despite all that, some fellow Arab patrons of the myth continue to delude the Muslim youth. They ignore the previously mentioned research and assure their audience that the Neanderthal is compelling evidence for evolution. The third method used by the myth zealots is framing. The myth disciples use the term creationist to refer to those who believe that God created beings with intention and will. I repeat, intention and will, not as some mislead by presenting the difference between us and them as a simple case of independent creation versus evolution, directed or otherwise. Intent and will is crucial, as it is the very thing that the evolution myth denies or casts doubts about. They call you a creationist to frame you as a believer in something peculiar, while they call the figures of pseudoscience scientists. Consequently, the naive youth, under the spell of intellectual terrorism, finds himself psychologically and unconsciously forced to escape this framing trap set up for creationists, so that they can join the side of enlightened scientists. while in fact, we who declare that we believe that Allah created beings intentionally and willingly are not creationists, but simply sound human beings, using minds, unsullied by the lunacy of the myth. In discussing an article with a myth disciple, they might say, but the author of this research is a creationist. A creationist. In other words, belief in creation has become a defect that degrades the scientific value of the research or article regardless of its logic or objectivity. It demeans its value in advance even before considering its content. Conversely, research published by myth disciples is subconsciously regarded by the deluded myth disciples as valuable and credible just because it is produced by those they consider to be scientists. This is the impact of framing. You might say, you, yourself, use framing when you call them myth disciples. I would ask you to review the previous 15 episodes, then decide whether what they present is science or myth. Then, you'll find out whether my description is deceptive framing or an accurate description for them. So, they are not, but mere names you have named them. Don't be deceived by the fancy labels and look at the facts. Thus far, we've discussed 10 methods for promoting the myth. Appeal to authority. Inductive fallacies. The big brain, little brain fallacy, addressing people as children. Avoiding necessary consequences. Shifting the burden of proof. Appeal to ignorance. Recycling invalidated lies, refuted more than 130 years ago. False analogies. Circular reasoning. Misleading terminology. Next episode we'll discuss, Allah willing, their methods of turning damaging evidence into supporting evidence. Under the title, All Roads Lead to the Myth. Stay tuned. May the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you.